Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to another episode of the Ferris Wheel. And to the left of me in the same studio is
Dr. Ian Clark.
And then across the glass window,
Stephen Wheeler.
And we are now in our third segment of the series specials where we talk about certain bands. So obviously for you listeners, you heard Ferris Kennedy's Foo Fighters piece, you heard Dr. Ian Clark's The Doors piece, and today is Stephen Wheeler's turn to do his piece on
R.E.M.
Rapid Eye Movement. Without further ado, my main man Wheels, take it away.
So why R.E.M.? Well, basically, this little stat should explain it. 15 albums, 1 EP, and 1 early rarities collection called the Dead Letters Office between 1982 and 2012. 6 of these went platinum, and in terms of circulation, R.E.M. runs between 1982 and 1998 as probably one of the great American rock bands in terms of popularity and influence. But their success is relatively unique. It's really hard to name another group without a traditional sex symbol on its roster. Frankly, none of the guys in R.E.M. even look remotely good. I mean, they're not Ramon Ugly, but they're not great-looking guys.
Oh, wow, Ramon Ugly, Jesus.
And, I mean, they lasted a very long time, a good 16 years. And they went from being very artsy-fartsy, and then they went very popular without seeming uncommercial, and they went very experimental towards the end. And so, I mean, there are a few contenders out there, like the Beach Boys. They were very great from 62 to 71, and they went a little experimental. Same thing with Grateful Dead, 30-year streak. But neither of these bands actually had successes for a very, very long time like R.E.M. I mean, they had successes, but R.E.M. from 82 to 1998 basically had bestsellers almost all the time. And so, I mean, there are others that could be in that roster, but they're disqualified on certain technical counts. For example, I'm thinking of the E Street Band, and the reason why they're disqualified is basically they're a backing band, whereas R.E.M. is something very bizarre. They're a very democratic unit, and everybody has input, whereas the E Street Band are there to help Bruce Springsteen sound just amazing. So without further ado, this is the story of R.E.M. So basically, they are the story of alternative rock in the United States. They start out with a post-punk sound. Their first single, Radio Free Europe, was released in 1981, and it actually sparked a back to the garage movement in the American underground. They were a lot of hardcore punk bands in the U.S. during the early 80s, and R.E.M. took some of their sound, but they brought back the guitar pop. They brought back more complex lyrics, cryptic lyrics, but they kept the DIY aesthetics from post-punk, and so it made them sound both traditional and modern, so they were quite bizarre in that regard. And they were formed by the very bizarre guys, Mike Mills to begin with, who was born in 58, Bill Berry in 58 as well. They're Southerners for a band that's strangely associated in terms of sound more to the northeast. So the fact is that they sounded slightly off of their origins. That's because they had like a very vast musical culture. And they both attended high school together in Macon. I'm not sure. Yeah? Mason, sorry.
Mason.
And they played in a number of bands during their teens. Michael Stipe, which is the lead singer, was born a few years later in 1960. and he's a military brat, so he was moving throughout the country during his childhood. By his teens, he had discovered punk rock, amongst other things, through Patti Smith, through television and through Wire, and he began playing in cover bands in St. Louis. By 1978, he had begun studying art at the University of Georgia in Athens, where he began frequenting the Wuxtree record store. And why am I saying that? It's not just micro trivia. It's actually due to the fact that that's where he met Peter Buck, who's, in this case, a native of California, who was a clerk there. And Buck actually was the band's internet from the back in the day, because he had a fanatical record collection. He had everything from classic rock to punk to free jazz, and basically he was introducing all these sounds to his buddies, and they had similar tastes, but they began working together, and eventually they would form a band. And in April of 1980, they performed for a friend. They rehearsed in a number of garages. They did some psychedelic bubblegum punk covers, and they did all this in an Episcopalian church. So if you can wrap your head around that, it's just very bizarre. And so the official first gig was on the 5th of April, 1980. And that night, they called themselves the Twisted Kites, and they played a mixture of original material and covers, including the Sex Pistols' God Save the Queen and Jonathan Richman's Roadrunner. And they considered a few names, amongst them Twisted Kites, but also Cans of Piss and Negro Eyes, which luckily all went the way of the dodo. And they settled on R.E.M, which my colleague explained a little earlier in terms of the definition. And why R.E.M of all names for the band? It's basically Stipe who found it in the dictionary. It's one of those cases you open the dictionary, you put your finger to it, and you found your band's name. Their first really big success came in the summer of 81. Their first single, Radio Free Europe, was recorded at Mitch Easter's Drive-In Studios. They released it on the local indie label Hiptone, and it was pressed for a run of only 1,000 copies. But because the gods smiled on them, most of those copies fell in the right hands. And due to the strong word of mouth, the single became a hit on college radio and topped the Village Voice year-end polls of Best Independent Single. The single also earned the attention of larger independent labels, and by the beginning of 1982, the band had signed to IRS Records, releasing the EP Chronic Town in the spring. Like the single, Chronic Town was well received, paving the way for the group's full-length debut album, 1983's Murmur. And basically, that's where the haunting atmosphere and the understated production came in. And that was their big hit. And you have to put yourself back into the mindset of the time. This is the time where Michael Jackson's Thriller and the Police Synchronicity were really big. So that this band actually had a hit with this music that was completely different was something quite extraordinary, especially considering back then it was basically just college radios that were playing them. And their really big break happened in October of 1983 when they made their first national television appearance on the Late Night with David Letterman. And so that's where things start going really, really big.
All right, Wheels, go ahead.
So at that point, we're around 84, and that hit basically has huge impact, which is really bizarre because they have an aversion to video, which at that point is starting to be really big, but they're constantly touring. And there's something that happens at that time also that becomes very bizarre. Stipe mumbles more and more the vocals, and he has a completely detached stage presence. So you would think, again, in the 80s, the age of image, that would have had a really bad impact, but no, they're becoming bigger and bigger. And by 85, the American underground is awash with R.E.M. sound-alike bands that have completely been forgotten by history, like Game Theory and Rain Parade, and basically they dressed like them and sounded like them. And so by 85, they're trying to find their way, and in 85, really Stipe becomes really bizarre. At this point, he puts on a huge amount of weight, which if you've ever seen pictures of him, he doesn't have the frame for it.
He's a small man.
He's a small man, is a very bony man. He dyed his hair bleach blonde, which maybe explains why now he's completely bald, and wore countless layers of clothing. And at this point, like the record producers are starting to wonder, like, what are we backing here? But the sales are there. They're continuing to be really, really good. And they start working out their new sound on Life's Rich Pageant. And they release their rarities collection, Dead Letter Office, in the spring of 87. But this is a point in time where they're basically starting to lay their groundwork for the mainstream success that's coming. But they never courted it. It's just like a really bizarre twist of fate. I think, to a certain extent, you can correct me. It's a little like Kurt Cobain. I don't think Cobain ever wanted mainstream success. It just happened.
Well, he was a pure genius.
Yes, but I don't think it was like programmed for it.
I'm sorry, Dr. Clark. Did you want to compare him to Jim Morrison?
I don't know. Yeah.
They both lived the same time, age-wise, 27 Club.
27 Club.
But we should have them fight. Who would win?
I would say that these guys, and you could say Stud, you could say Kurt Cobain, did they want to become famous? Probably it helps, because when you become famous, you have more independence, more or less. Than you don't have to play bars. You have the money to go off and do this and that. So, I don't know. When people say they want to become famous in a rock band, I guess not, but that's definitely the exception, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Most bands, from Beatles up, whoever, Elvis, but a certain amount of fame is okay. You're not selling out.
Exactly. But in this case, also, the other thing that helped quite a lot in late 87, early 88 is the fact that they leave their independent label, IRS Records, and they're signed by Warner Brothers. And for those of you who grew up in the era of the MP3, this was a big deal because Warner Brothers basically were producing all the big bands. Basically in the 80s, they had become the label of choice. And so this produced Green, which starts the double platinum and top 10 single era of R.E.M., and not just on college radios, but throughout all commercial radios. And there's a point in that time where they released the song End of the World. And strangely enough, a lot of people have said it's basically their swan song of being an independent band. It's basically saying goodbye to their young selves and embracing the fact that they're going now to the big leagues, and they're now with the B-52s and the Bonos. Although I think they would have hated that comparison.
Sonny Bono.
Oh, Sonny Bono. I'm sorry. I just, when I hear Bono, I think of Dr. Clark and The Miracle of Joy Ramone. Oh.
Joey Ramone.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. So during this time, the Green Tour is going to be a really big success, but unfortunately it's going to be really draining for the group. And so they're going to take an extended rest during the period around 89. And so this is a point where each member pursued side project, amongst them something called Hindu Love Gods. You could hear also an album with Warren Zevon in '86. That was released during that time. And so they got that out of their system to produce in the 90s Out of Time, which was released in the spring of 1991.
Now, who would have thought Peter Buck would have walked into a pawn shop, bought a mandolin, created that amazing riff, and 7 Grammys later, you got Losing My Religion? Who would have thought that?
And it's the biggest single of the group.
It is. So you're going to do it. What are you going to do, Clark?
I'm not going to do anything. I'm just trying to think of an answer to your question. I don't know. Maybe his father might have thought. I don't know.
It's a damn good song. Should we play that song?
It's me in the corner. It's me in the spotlight. Losing my religion, and that's all I know.
So this is actually off Out of Time, which is the group's biggest selling album of all time during their existence. It sold over 4 million copies in the U.S. and spent 2 weeks at the top of the charts. And which, when you think about it, like, this is a group that started out on college radios and wanted to be the anti-popular group to a certain extent, and now they're at the top of the charts. And actually, this brings them to the release of the dark and meditative Automatic for the People that comes out in '92.
That just hit 25 years last November.
It did, yeah.
And they re-released it. So I guess times are a little tough sometimes.
So Automatic for the People, if you've ever listened to it literally in a chronological sense, just after Out of Time, it's very slow, it's quiet, and it's reflective.
It's very dark.
It is. And maybe one of the reasons is there are string arrangements by Led Zeppelin's bassist John Paul Jones, which just brings in like a new vibe on the album, which makes it really impressive in my opinion. It actually went quadruple platinum upon its release, and it was in the top 40, and it included singles like Drive, Man on the Moon, and Everybody Hurts, which I think are some of the songs we really associate more with R.E.M. at this point, after all these years. And
Didn't they make wasn't that it was Jim Carrey movie?
Yeah.
Oh, Man on the Moon. The Andy Kaufman.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think.
Andy Kaufman. Yeah.
Hey, Andy. Yeah.
Hey, Andy, did you hear about... Which Jim Carrey movie was that anyways?
Man on the Moon.
Man
That's
on the
actually
Moon.
the name of
That's
the
the one?
movie.
Yeah.
Wow. Again, a little bit of Canadian content.
Exactly.
There you go. Hey.
And it's basically like this album is all about this. It's R.E.M's focus on quirky character. The Andy Kaufman was basically, at that point, it was a little forgotten. Taxi had been off the air for a few years, and frankly, his shtick was growing tiresome for some. And so they brought him back to the public's consciousness. They also talked about Montgomery Clift, which at this point had been a little forgotten, and by the mid-'90s, thanks in part to R.E.M., he became somewhat of a hero, a little like Oscar Wilde, because he was a gone too soon, closeted 50s Hollywood star, and people started rediscovering him thanks in great part to R.E.M. And I mean, there are a lot of classic works on this album, but because we were trying to keep this short, I won't go through every single one of them. Suffice it to say that after these 2 monster albums, R.E.M. decided to return to being a rock band. And because of the monster success, 1994's album was named Monster. It was really conceived as a back to basic, basically a way for them to escape all the pressures of fame. Unfortunately, it was difficult and plagued with tension, but it actually gave out a few number ones. It received a lot of accolades from a number of old school critics, and basically, it's Monster is the one album that confirmed them as superstars, and basically had the strongest sales and reviews of their career, which is, when you think about it, a little bizarre for an album that probably shouldn't have seen the light of day.
Well, that album there, though, what I like about it, and Dr. Clark, correct me if I'm wrong, but they kind of went back to basics of what a real rock alternative album should be.
Yeah, I mean, R.E.M. always, it struck me as a band that didn't go for a lot of overdubs. They if you see them and you get the videos live, they sound almost exactly like they do in the studio. I mean, they were just, there was an honesty to that band that even comes through today. There were no tricks. There were no outstanding virtuosos in terms of instruments, right? They're just one of those bands that gets the job done and then they leave. But there was, one of our previous episodes, we spoke about the Doors. There was a certain darkness to a lot of the R.E.M. work. I don't know where it comes from, not necessarily the lyrics, but it's maybe is Stipe's inflections. I don't know, but there is a darkness to a lot of the stuff.
It's as if there's a lot of discoveries in their personal life that they're finding out and that they're starting to experience and want to express it. And that's usually how songwriters want to get their message across, is obviously through personal emotions, personal relationships, anything how you do personal to them. It's easy for someone to talk about their story and put it in a third person perspective because you're not giving it away. So as a listener, you're like, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a good song. What's it mean? Oh, I never really thought of that. I just like the beat. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of innuendos in there. There are some messages. There are some meanings to it. So I think there's maybe some times that they were battling.
Exactly.
Someone that was battling something.
Well, actually, it's interesting that you point that out, because during the tour in '95, Bill Berry actually suffers a huge brain aneurysm while he's performing. And he has surgery almost immediately. And luckily, he fully recovers within a month. And the band resumes the tour 2 months after the Barry's aneurysm, but the illness was only the beginning of a series of problems that plagued the tour. And Mills actually went and underwent abdominal surgery to remove an intestinal tumor in July. A month later, Stipe had to have an emergency surgery for a hernia. So
these guys are falling apart.
Basically. But it's a huge financial success, strangely enough. But all this stress, all this basically all this cursed health drama that they went through made it so that Jefferson Holt, which had been their longtime manager, had to leave. And this was the start of a lot of problems that they went through starting during that era. In 96, September of 96, just before the band announced that they had re-signed with Warner Brothers, reportedly for a record-breaking sum of $80 million, they released the album New Adventures in Hi-Fi, and this was their first huge commercial flop, and critical as well. The album failed to generate one single hit single, and it did go platinum, but it sounds slightly small when you consider that the other ones, the three predecessors, went quadruple platinum. So by early 1997, they are starting to really lose their edge. The members are again pursuing new projects. Stipe actually has his own film company called Single Cell Pictures that he's starting to really invest all his time in. Buck actually starts a free jazz group, Tuatara, and the last straw, really, to end that golden age, if we can call it that, is when Bill Berry left the band in 1997. Because at this point, the aneurysm that he suffered on stage in a concert in Switzerland has really taxed his health. He's retired to Georgia to become a farmer. And so R.E.M. soldiers on, and they enter what we can call the third and final stage of their career, which, unfortunately, due to the fact that Bill Berry's no longer there to keep him grounded, goes into more ethereal, off-electronic, new agey zones. They're going to release 3 albums, Up, Reveal, and Around the Sun. It's not that there aren't plenty of wonderful moments across these records. Hup is their best album during that period. They have songs like At My Most Beautiful, Day Sleeper, All the Way to Reno, I've Been High. I mean, these songs actually have fans, but casual fans, even some of the hardcore ones that had been there for years, start to leave the band at this point. There's going to be a 3-year gap also between Reveal in 2001 and 2004's Around the Sun. And strangely enough, this is a bit, I mean, in terms of gaps, this is only 3 years, but it seems to have erased the memory in the fans' mind of 2 decades of really hard work and amazing songs. And unfortunately, at this point, there's also the fact that the band members are getting a little older. Some of them are actually baby boomers, so this is the point in time where the baby boomer backlash starts, especially in the world of music. So it starts to get really hard for them to get through the day. And they do a worldwide tour in 2005, which includes an appearance at the London branch of Live 8. In 2007, they're induced into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they start working on the next album, Accelerate, which is going to be released in 2008. They're gonna try with this album a new sound, which is a faster, more guitar-driven sound than Around the Sun, and it earns rave reviews and it tops the charts again. But again, we're really far from the 1990s. By 2011, Collapse Into Now, the band has a more expansive sound. The slower ballads and the moody atmospherics, again, create positive reviews for the most part. They debuted in the top 5 in America, but the heart's not really into it anymore. And in September 2011, R.E.M. announces that they break up amicably after 31 years together, which I remember seeing on the television, and it was just very bizarre because you really thought these guys would do it till their 80s like Rolling Stones. But at the same time, you see in their eyes that they didn't want to become a shadow of their former selves, and after 10 years of walking in the wilderness, you can quite understand what they were going through. So this starts the last phase of their existence, which is basically when people are going to look on their body of work. There's going to be releases of Out of Time, amongst other things. There's going to be a release of the video album Live from Austin, Texas. And people are actually, strangely enough, it's like when an artist dies, there's like this nostalgia that comes in. And so Stipes does the talk show circuit, and their sales are actually not that bad, but again, there's no talk really of going on a reunion tour or anything of the sort. So really, it's more of a less or an organic breakup, if we can call it that, which is rather rare in music nowadays. So where am I going with this? Well, R.E.M. was an alternative band in a time of other great names like Nirvana, Radiohead, Coldplay, Pearl Jam, and they kind of inspired quite a few of these guys because, I mean, they had a good 15 to 20 years on some of these musicians. And it's important to separate R.E.M. from other American rock icons like Dylan's, Paul Simon, Springsteen, because a group of musicians is much tougher to maintain over decades than a leader with a backup band. As created individuals working together as a single public entity, speaking for and as the people, the rock band is the epitome in miniature of rock and roll as the most democratic popular art form. So throughout their many success and despite their all too human slip-ups, their embrace of place, travel, progressive politics, love in all its guises, and greater importance of forging emotional connections with fellow humans. Basically, that's what we can celebrate after 30 years of R.E.M. And that's why, according to me and quite a few people, they're the quintessential American rock band.
Oh, no wonder when I got that CD from the library of the greatest hits, it was 1987 to 2003, and that's where they didn't put anything else on it.
Exactly.
So, well, at least they kind of covered the bases.
Well, I mean, it's the golden age, basically.
That's
so.
it. What would David Bowie say? Golden years, golden years.
It's funny you mentioned Bowie, because as you're speaking with the band, a lot of their lyrics have to do with kind of maybe isolation, but detachment. And a lot of Bowie's, he's always talking about aliens, of not belonging. And a lot of R.E.M. songs, when I remember the band quite clearly, their songs often is written from an outsider's point of view. Everybody hurts, or whatever it is. That's me in the spotlight. It's an interesting parallel.
Shiny, happy people.
Shiny, happy people, yeah, really. And, so that maybe that contributes to the darkness a bit, right? They're not kind of waking up like Love and Spoonful,
Well, funny, with the Shiny Happy People, that was collaborated with I don't know her name, but it was the redhead girl from B-52s.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I like that connection with.
Exactly.
It makes sense. It really makes sense, Wheels. This is one hell of a piece you put together, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's super informative.
So, I guess.
With that.
I'm going to sign off. I'm Ferris Kennedy.
I'm Ian Clark.
And I'm Stephen Wheeler.